Let's talk about the gender wage gap. What exactly is the gender wage gap? Is it real, or is it something that we've simply made up to create a stir in the media? I'm sure you've heard the phrase, women make 77 cents for every dollar that a man makes in the US. This statistic is shared by celebrities, the media, even our president. Is it true? Do women in our country really earn less than our men? And where does this statistic even come from? We're here to tell you that after much research, the gender wage gap is very much real. However, it's not as plain and simple as the statistics claim. Numbers can be very misleading, and when shared improperly, can lead to a lot of misunderstanding about the gender wage gap. There are many reasons the gender wage gap exists, and not all of them are as diabolical as you may have been led to believe. In our presentation, we're going to explain exactly what the wage gap is, why it exists, and how we as a whole can come up with a solution. Next, Armand is going to discuss exactly what the wage gap is.
Thank you, Julie. Now, what is the wage gap? What is true about it? What is not true about it? And what can we do to fix it? Guys, I'm Armin, and I'm going to be going through some of these things. Now, first, the one big stat that's always being hurled out by everybody, from politicians to celebrities, is the 77 cents per every dollar that male make. Now, this statistic comes from a 2010 study that was published in 2011 by the US Census Bureau, where they take the mean average wage of a man and divide it by the mean average wage of a woman. And in this, they get that women makes about 77% of what the male makes. Now, that doesn't take into account hours worked, the type of job that each particular sex is doing, and the specific choices that either male or females make to justify their salary. Now, just to put this in a simple context, if it were true that women at one level and men at one level went for the same job, and you can get away with paying women 77 cents per dollar of the man, then why wouldn't a company hire only women? Cost of goods, or excuse me, cost of just cost in general, are one of the biggest things for companies that they try to dwindle down every year, and salaries is in many cases the biggest cost. So I mean, if you could hire a woman for a fraction of what you can hire a man for, why won't most companies do that? Now, to dwell deeper into it, Claudia Golden, she is a lecturer over at Harvard, and she had an interview, and she was quoted as saying that the 77 cent phenomenon, it answers a particular question, but it doesn't answer how long the woman and how long the man works. Now, I'm summarizing it, of course, but this woman, she describes it perfectly, that personal choice is the biggest thing when it comes to salary in the long term, and that's one thing that this specific stat that is being used everywhere doesn't really look into as much. Georgetown University, they did a study that showed that the top 5 highest paying careers in the United States, 4 out of the 5 are dominated by men, by I think it was 65% or higher. Now, to contrast that, the top 5 lowest paying jobs in the United States, careers, excuse me, 4 out of 5 are dominated by women. Now you could say, of course, this is just because women aren't being given opportunities in the workforce, but that's not true, because women, they choose to study careers that are historically lower paying. That's where Mark J. Perry, who is a professor at U of M Flint, he used statistics from Glassdoor.com and the Department of Education that showed that uh, in universities, the top five highest paying majors are again dominated by men, and vice versa for the top four lowest paying majors. Now, that's one of the biggest issues is that women, they're not going into these careers that pay as much as men, or excuse me, into careers that pay as much as careers are dominated by men. And that's one thing that really needs to change. In some cases, where women do get paid less when they're on equal footing with the men, is circumstances such as when women are taking time off for starting family, like pregnancies, or because they can't spend as much time at work as a man because as it was shown from the Department of Labor that women spend about 50% more time taking care of home responsibilities than men do. So it's these kinds of things that prohibit women from going further into their careers, and some things that I think that really do needs to be changed. Now I'm gonna hand it over to Houston, who's going to talk about why the wage gap and why it's important.
Why the wage gap? A wide variety of reasons contribute to the gender wage gap, many of which have actually reduced the gap. Some of these factors include education, greater workforce participation, gender segregation, and unpaid work. First, more education is often associated with higher earnings. Historically, women had lower levels of college education than men, which could have contributed to the overall wage gap. However, in 2016, the U.S. Department of Labor did a study that found between 1975 and 2015, the share of women in the labor force aged 25 plus with a college degree increased from 14% to 41%. Over those 40 years, women went from graduating at a lower rate than men to quickly surpassing them. But here, on this Department of Labor graph, we see women are still making only a percentage of a man's salary. We started at making 59%, and now we're only making 78% of their male salary. A second reason the wage gap is occurring is gender segregation. Why are women more likely to work in a lower paying job than men? Author Robin Ely had an article in the December 2014 Harvard Business Review issue that focused on a study of Harvard Business School graduates. These were students with their MBAs. She found men were significantly more likely than women to have direct reporting jobs, profit and loss responsibility, and positions in senior management. Here we see through this study that a woman's professional growth rates are being stymied in the workforce due to gender segregation. And these are just a few reasons why the wage gap is occurring.
Thank you, Houston. I will now talk about solutions to the gender wage gap. It is obvious that a gender wage gap exists in today's society. We as a whole need to come together and eliminate this gap. There are a few ways that we can do to help this. We can make salary transparency. This is when the salary amount is open and employees can see how much their colleagues with similar roles are making. This way, there will be no discrepancy in whether or not a woman is getting paid unfairly or not. This will force companies to treat all their employees fairly and pay them equally no matter what their gender is. A second way to help the gender gap inequality diminish is to implement paid family leave policies. In most families, the women are the ones who take care of the kids and care for the house. This is already a huge load on their shoulders, which may hinder them from working to their full potential. If a woman was pregnant, she would be worried about not only the health of the baby, but whether or not she will have enough days off from work to care for it. If women knew that the company is required to give them ample time off from work, not just a week or two, they would be open to taking on more responsibility at work, which in turn may give them a higher salary. Lastly, society as a whole needs to promote pay equality. Those who are against the gender wage gap, both men and women, need to speak out and make themselves heard. They will make this issue more known to others, which will help make it go away. Through social media, such as Facebook and Twitter, this can be done. And now to Brittany to wrap things up.
Thank you, Michael. In conclusion, the wage gap is real. Men do make more than women, but there are other factors besides gender discrimination to take into account. Women typically choose lower paying careers than men do. And right now, more women are educated and willing to work than ever in the history of the U.S., but a lot of the responsibility of the home falls on the woman, which doesn't allow her to work as many hours as a man would be able to. Some solutions would include pay transparency so that people, particularly women, don't get lowballed when they're being offered a salary from a company. Also, companies need to step up their paid family leave times because a lot of women put off having a family because they fear they won't have enough time off. And in this age of technology, it's easier than ever to speak out against injustice. So if more people went public with their negative views of the wage gap, then a real change could be made. Every voice counts. Thank you for your time.